Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, July 29th, 2024. After 2 terrific weeks in Italy, I am home and happy to be back and happy to have Alastair Crooke with us this morning on what is happening in Lebanon. But first, this.
You all know that I am a paid spokesperson for Lear Capital, but I'm also a customer, a very satisfied customer. About a year ago, I bought gold, and it's now increased in value 23%. So $100 invested in gold a year ago is now worth $123. If you have $100 in the bank, it still shows $100, but $100 in the bank is now worth 24% less. Inflation has reduced all of your savings, all of your buying power, and mine, by 24%, and gold is largely immune from that. If you want to learn how gold will soon hit $3,200 an ounce, call Lear Capital, 800-511-4620, or go to LearJudgeSnap.com. Get your free gold report. Same experts who predicted the 23% rise that I've enjoyed have predicted this $3,200 an ounce gold. Learn about how to transfer this to an IRA. Protect your savings. 800-511-4620, LearJudgeSnap.com. Tell them the judge sent you.
Alastair, welcome here, my friend. Welcome back to the show. There is so much to talk about. I picked two of the most dramatic weeks in modern American history to try and relax in northern Italy, and there's much to discuss. But let's get right to the hot news this morning. From the evidence that you have observed, who was responsible for the death of those Druze children that were playing soccer in the Golan Heights over the weekend?
First of all, I just need to make something clear, perhaps, to the viewers, which is that where this Majal Shams is in occupied Golan. It is, in fact, Syrian territory, and nearly all those Druze were Syrian citizens. They have Israeli residence, but they are Syrian citizens, and most of them support the resistance, Hezbollah and the other resistance movements. I just mention that because the idea that they could have been targeted by Hezbollah is extremely unlikely. Anyway, something occurred there. We don't know exactly what. It seems there wasn't a direct hit because there's no evidence of a crater. There's nothing directly evidence of that. There is fragments of a missile, and the Israelis say it's a Fajr-1. It is an Iranian missile used by Hezbollah. Now, it's possible. Hezbollah are saying that they did fire a missile that day, but it was aimed at an Israeli outpost, which was some distance away from the village. And the Israelis did respond with one of their Iron Dome anti-missile defense systems. Now, are we seeing the same thing? Did these two missiles collide? Did one get diverted and did it fragment? And we see the results of the fragmentations in the village. I don't know, but for the US is taking a hard line, taking the strange line, saying this was an attack on Israel northern territories. That's been said by Kamala Harris and by the White House. And I'm just underlining, these were not Israelis, and it was not northern Israel. Yes, some time ago, Trump informally acknowledged the annexation of occupied Golan, but no one else really has.
Well, the recognition of the annexation by the American president would not make it lawful. It's still occupied territory, is it not?
Exactly. And
And
has therefore the right to self-defense too.
Is there any history of Hezbollah attacking its own people in order to provoke a sort of false flag?
Not in that way. I mean, in years past, there have been occasionally a mistake. And as soon as the mistake has been made, Hezbollah has always made a point of admitting the mistake and saying it was a mistake. In this case, they are asserting very vociferously, and so is the Lebanese state, also, by the way, that it was not a Hezbollah missile that was fired at Majal al-Shams.
Here's the Lebanese foreign minister on this very subject, interviewed about it last night, cut number 4.
So we don't know who did it. I know Hezbollah is accused by Israel that they did it. Hezbollah refuses. My feeling is that why would Hezbollah do it to kill Arabs, to kill Syrians? And Hezbollah has been, always targeting military positions of Israel, not civilians. The number of civilians killed in Israel were less than 7, while in Lebanon over more than 100 killed by Israel in Lebanon. So I cannot understand why would Hezbollah do it. There is no logic in it.
So you have the presumptive Democratic nominee for president, Vice President Harris, and the Republican nominee saying almost the same thing. Iran is behind it. You have the vice presidential nominee for the Republicans, the Democrats don't have one yet, saying it's time to attack Iran. What do you think Israel's going to do? The Israeli cabinet met for 6 hours yesterday.
Well, first of all, just going back to your first point, Iran. I mean, this was the message that Netanyahu and the government brought to the joint session of Congress. It was all a war message saying that we're being attacked, and every one of these proxies that's surrounding us, whether it is Hezbollah, Hamas, are really Iranian proxies, and that the West needs to support us in a war against Iran. So I'm not surprised that they're taking the cue from that statement. And maybe this was already sort of in the works. I'm quite sure that Congress and the people, the power brokers in Washington, had a take on what was coming from Netanyahu. If you remember, before, or in the last session before you were away, I said that this would be what Netanyahu would say. He would come and say that this Israel is under attack from Iran, and all of these are, if you like, and he used the word Shia 7th of October, to, if you like, to make it clear that it was all Iran. That's what he said. So this is not a surprise. What's happened now is that it seems that there's been huge pressure from the White House, from the Biden team, to try and see if they can't get a victory in Gaza first. So what they're doing is they are presuming that actually what's the threat of attack on Hezbollah will cause Iran and Hezbollah to put maximum pressure on Hamas to agree to the Israeli demands for Gaza and to, if you like, to capitulate before the demands. Now, I think this is unlikely to happen because, in fact, just yesterday, and the if you like, the negotiators were meeting in Rome yesterday, and at that point there are new demands from Netanyahu. They wish to have more Israeli forces remaining in Gaza. They don't accept a full withdrawal of that. They want a list of all those that are living hostages. They want the names of them before an agreement is made. And they want also to have control, a mechanism of control, so that any Gazans heading north to their homes in the north of Gaza, there will be some mechanism to ensure they're disarmed before they cross the Netzarim corridor. So they want a Netzarim corridor that is manned by foreign forces to prevent any, if you like, Gazans returning with arms. And Israel says it wants control of the Philadelphia corridor, and it wants Israeli control of the Rafah crossing. And some of the Israelis who are involved in the negotiations were saying there really isn't, they don't think there's a hope for these extra demands by Netanyahu. In fact, they were saying they doubted that if the Arab negotiators would even bother to pass them on to Hamas, because it seems so unlikely. So it doesn't look as if the prime minister is actually wanting to take the negotiations forward.
I don't think Netanyahu ever wanted a deal. I think the negotiations are just a pretext to keep him in office, to keep the war going, to keep him from being prosecuted, because it seems like every time they get closer and closer, the Israelis, and you're an experienced negotiator, you know this, they keep adding to their demands. They keep demanding things that they've already taken off the table.
Well, you're exactly right. Except I would add that, I mean, you know, I know lots of people don't like Netanyahu one bit, but, and I understand that completely, but, you know, it's not just about his personal position. There is a substantive, a pluralistic view that supports his position, that there must be war, that Hezbollah, I saw even if you like, the leader of the opposition calling for Hezbollah to completely be crushed yesterday, that they had to be destroyed, calling on Israel to completely flatten Hezbollah. And that is from the opposition left-wing side. And on the right, it's the same. So, I mean, it's wrong, I think, just to attribute it to his personal ambition. There is more to it than that. There is a strong demand. And what's more, there is support for his suggestion, you know, that this has to be a war against Iran ultimately, and that ultimately, of course, means US support. They cannot do it alone. They tried to give a sort of, if you like, a teaser example of that by their attack on Yemen, on Hodeidah port in Yemen, which was about 1,600 kilometers away from Israel, to show that, you know, Israel is capable of going off and fighting its enemies wherever they are. And now we must be supported, as he told Congress. You've all got to, this is a war that is your war as much as it's Israel's war. Iran must be defeated, as well as all these groups, and you have to join with us in that. So, I mean, there is a support for that. Now, what's happening now, just to update you, is really because there's a sort of pressure because this has always been, if you like, the Biden vision, that if only we can get a ceasefire in Gaza, then everything else will fall into place. We get a ceasefire in Gaza, then we have quiet in Gaza, then there will be quiet in Lebanon, in the south of Lebanon, and then with this quiet, we can start making arrangements for Gaza in the future. Perhaps we can even get to more of a sort of bringing in a normalization of Saudi Arabia. And for Biden team, the key has always been to put the maximum pressure on Hamas to try and get a capitulation to the Israeli proposals for Gaza, which include continued warfare in Gaza. Netanyahu's just made that. He actually is asking now in the new proposals for guarantees from international sources that Israel will have the right to go in and continue the war after the first phase and the hostages have been released.
Well, no country will guarantee that, with the possible exception of the Biden administration.
Exactly. I mean, it's you can see. So they're just waiting for that. And then the question is, how much of an attack will it be? It's clear, they say it at every opportunity, there will be a severe attack on Hezbollah. And it has been agreed, and it has been delegated by the cabinet that met last night to Netanyahu and Golan, the defense minister. They have discretion to start the attack as they choose. Now, what Lebanon and Hezbollah and Iran and others are saying to them, you start attacking Beirut, you attack civilians, you attack the infrastructure, And then Hezbollah is going to come and strike into the depth of Israel. And that is going to lead to a war. And by the way, Iran says, we won't just sit back. If that is the case, we will get involved.
Right.
So it really depends on what happens in this next period. Are they going to really, hit only Hezbollah's military targets? And I think that's unlikely because Hezbollah, I know, are about 90 meters down in their tunnels. They're not fools. They know this is coming. So you see sort of references in the Israeli press. Oh, it seems Hezbollah has abandoned its positions. Well, of course, they've gone down to the tunnels while the Air Force. But earlier just before the weekend, just to finish off the picture for you, the latest Israeli jet, an F-35 stealth jet of Israel, was nearly hit by a Hezbollah surface-to-air missile. And so it turned tail and left very quickly. It was quite a close shave. So obviously Hezbollah has got some surface-to-air defenses ready. And I think that that was quite frightening for Israel, that it was the F-35, not an F-16, F-35, which was supposed to be stealthy, which was nearly hit by one of their surface defense missiles.
All right. You mentioned a few moments ago the calls on the Israeli left for the demolition of Hezbollah, calls which we've heard for a while from the right. So the Israeli public, or at least the political elites in Israel, seem to be united on this. But how realistic is that? The IDF is exhausted. They can't beat a ragtag Hamas. Do they really think that they can take on and defeat Hezbollah?
This is a key question that you're asking. They are exhausted. They have a sense of being defeated. They are not enthusiastic for this war, but it has moved to a different layer. It's gone beyond, if you like, the rational and the our sort of structures of thinking. And it's moving to much more an eschatological level, to the Talmud and to the sense, that this is the destiny of Israel. This must be done, even if it's a suicidal project. We have, divine right on our side. And I know for the West, it's very hard to accept these ideas, but it really is, a messianic vision, not a rational one, this calculation about a war with Hezbollah, because you're absolutely right. My sense is that that there will be big surprises coming from Hezbollah, and that in fact Israel is may be defeated. It's betting everything on this, and it's betting it on its sort of divine mission, rather than on a very careful calculation of the forces available. Maybe they think that if they start in Lebanon, that somehow this will suddenly prompt the United States to come in and attack Iran. But I don't think that is what people are going to do just before an election in the States. I think it would not, to have a little bit of tension, okay, and for Israel to be attacking Hezbollah, yes, that might play well in the election, but all-out war against Iran, I don't think would play very well. So I don't know how they think this is going to end in a favorable way, but it seems that's the bet they're going to make.
Were you surprised at the speech that Prime Minister Netanyahu gave to Congress? There was no meaningful path to peace. There wasn't even the discussion of peace. It was the same old high-end bellicosity. It's almost as if, correct me if I think I'm wrong, his audience was not the American public and not the American Congress, but the Israeli public back home.
Well, it didn't go down very well with the Israeli public back home because, there was that huge omission. Yes, he mentioned that there was one of the hostages in the audience there at one point, But he didn't even use the word a deal or a negotiated outcome. He didn't mention it. And so that hasn't gone down very well with the families and the hostage families and the other half of Israel, which is not so messianic, which is more, liberal European. So it didn't go down that well. But I do think that his speech was what I expected him to say. I do think that there is a determination to try still and find a way to pull the United States into its conflicts, into Israel's conflicts, in a real sense, that the United States will solve this for them. So there was no solution to Gaza because there isn't a solution to Gaza, frankly. There's nothing that will solve that. There's no solution to the other problems Israel. There's not going to be a two-state solution because there are 800,000 settlers living on what it would be the state of Palestine. And they're not going to be removed except by force. And what state is willing to use military force to remove 800,000 settlers from the West Bank? I don't think Europe intends that, and I don't think the United States would do that either. For sure, the United States wouldn't do that. So there's no real solution except to go to Armageddon and to try and bring in other states and the United States into what he laid out in Congress, a war of civilizations, a war against Iran, against everyone.
Does he really think the American public has the stomach for such a war, particularly in the midst of an election?
I don't think he has that view, but I think he feels that he got the backing of the power structures. I think he got a green light. I think I sent you a message on Friday that they were quoting a green light coming from, if you like, the deep state, the power brokers in Washington for an attack on Hezbollah, not on Iran, but on Hezbollah. And then Katz said that explicitly in the last day or so. He said, United States and European states stand behind us in our attack on Hezbollah. The Europeans say things differently, of course, and everyone sort of, oh no, restraint. But I believe I think, he did get some sort of assurances.
Your reference to Katz is the Israeli foreign minister.
Yes, the foreign minister said that. And before that, a senior security official on Channel 14 on Friday said the green light had been given and that we could expect Netanyahu to come back and go to the Ministry of Defense and start preparing the war. Now, the orders for the war have already been given. The plans for the war have been approved in Hezbollah. The question is, what are they going to attack? Just military targets, but there won't be many of those lying on the surface. Or are they going to, and therefore it be a sort of demonstrative attack, or are they going to go further, in which case then, or the equation that exists between Hezbollah and Israel will be broken, and Hezbollah will feel free to attack into the depth of Israel. And then we will probably be going towards a wider regional war.
Here's what confronted Netanyahu when he got home. This lady, Aviva Siegel, she was a hostage for 51 days. Her husband is still a hostage. Her English is excellent, as you'll hear in a moment. She gave an interview on July 24th to ABC News. Here's what she had to say.
Way Netanyahu being here in your eyes?
I just want to say that the leaders of the world have been chosen by us, by people, to lead this world in a better way. And killing should not be allowed. There should not be wars. The leaders should handle life and things that happen between countries in a different way. I'm against killing.
Is that a view that has a substantial currency amongst the Israeli public?
Well, it's really rather paradoxical that she should say that just after what we witnessed in the United States, when we've seen a sort of coup d'etat mounted against a sitting president, whether for good reason or bad, but nonetheless being thrown out of office without any involvement of the public, and then a sort of coronation announced of the chosen successor that is coming from the leaders, if you like, the cabinet, the Politburo within the government that has chosen Kamala Harris and is going to propel her up. Maybe it will be different at the end of the day, but she's on test now to go through it. No primaries, no proper process, simply, if you like, the leaders in behind. So sadly, I mean, actually, she touches a sore point because, you know, we're almost reaching the stage in democracies in Europe as much as in America, whereby actually the people, the views of the ordinary people are seen to be awkward and unnecessary. And is it better to let the sort of the big money interests and also the people who are professionals in politics manage the whole electoral process, but don't consult the people?
What happens if Kamala Harris wins and she calls up Netanyahu and says, you have 24 hours to agree to a ceasefire, otherwise we're going to stop sending you military equipment?
It'll never happen because, and this was the point I've been trying to explain before, is that, you know, what is the deep state as opposed to the sort of political permanent state? And the deep state is really what I call sort of structures, if you like, load-bearing structures that exist in America and have existed for some time, and they will not allow anyone to touch them. One of them is the military edge for Israel that cannot be touched. And above that is a superstructure of policies towards the region, to Egypt, to Saudi Arabia, that is all based on Israel's qualitative structure. Then there are other parts of that, the financial aspect of it, of the dollar dominance and of the financial prospect. All of these cannot be touched. As the Bush doctrine, I mean, it still passes on, it's still the current doctrine, the Bush doctrine out of the Wolfowitz doctrine, that we will not allow any peer competitor, any competitor to American hegemony to emerge, and we will stop that happening by preemptive action. So these are the, if you like, load-bearing structures of all of this policy, and you don't touch that. If you touch that, you know, and this is why it's so sensitive what happened at Milwaukee and others, because, you know, suddenly they were all sitting there, the deep state people like Pompeo and Murdoch and all those people watching, if you like, Trump after the attempted assassination and raising his fist and saying, fight, fight, and then appointing a populist, a seeming populist, J.D. Vance, as his prospective running mate. I mean, they'll be going crazy with us, going quite crazy, because from the perspective of that, those, if you like, load-bearing structures, the key foreign policy structures on which the whole of the post-war era has been founded, you're not allowed to touch them.
Yeah, but what you're saying,
that won't happen.
What you're saying is that American foreign policy is not reflective of the will of the people or even the will of the president. It's reflective of entrenched interest, military, military, industrial, intelligence community complex.
Exactly. I'm saying precisely that foreign policy is, we're not allowed, I mean, parts of foreign policy you can play with, but those bedrocks like Israel and its, if you like, qualitative edge must be respected. They're not going to let Kamala Harris say something. That's why, I mean, if she goes on sort of expressing sympathy for people in Gaza, you know, it could be that in due course, some other candidate will suddenly emerge as the power brokers above decide, you know, she's not respecting. The last thing they will allow is partisanship into the bipartisan arrangement on Israel within the United States Congress. There is a bipartisan position on the quantitative edge for Israel. And if she introduces a strong element of partisanship, other than just a peripheral one for electoral purposes, that will not be acceptable. And we might even see a new candidate suddenly produced out of a hat by the power brokers in Hollywood and in Silicon Valley, the big money, the big checkbook holders.
Fascinating stuff, Alastair. Absolutely fascinating. Oh, how I missed these Monday mornings with you. Of course, we did spend a Monday together and with your lovely wife in Florence, and it was a delightful
We did.
day. Yes.
It was great to see you there. Great.
Thank
Sorry
you.
it was so hot.
Yeah, it was brutally hot, but worth it. Thank you very much for your time. We'll look forward to seeing you next Monday, same time. All the best, my dear friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It is good to be back, and thank you for the kind comments of so many of you about my suntan and about my being back. But we are back in the saddle, and we'll deliver for you all of your favorites this week at 10 o'clock this morning Eastern. Ray McGovern at 11 o'clock this morning Eastern. Larry Johnson at 2 o'clock this afternoon Eastern. Ambassador Charles Freeman, and all of your regulars coming throughout the week. Thank you for watching. See you soon. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.